Okay. Welcome everybody to another working group batch meeting. Today is January 18th, 2024. Please remember that this meeting is recorded, will be uploaded to YouTube, and remember to adhere to the Kubernetes Code of Conduct. With that, let me present the agenda real quick. We only have one item from Michał. For the managed by label, is my screen visible? Should be. So we have just this one item in the agenda, but before we go into it, I wanted to share that we have changed the meeting time starting in the next one. So from now on, we will have two different time zones. We will have one meeting 3 p.m. In Central European time. So this means it's 1 hour earlier from today. So that's gonna happen every 4 weeks. And 2 weeks from there, in February 15th, we're gonna have another meeting that is more friendly to the West Coast, 3 p.m. Pacific time. So this pattern will repeat every 2 weeks. We'll have a meeting either at 3 p.m. Central European or 3 p.m. Pacific. So hopefully that accommodates better to most people around the globe. Any questions there? No. Okay. Michał, do you need to share your screen, or should I just open here?
It's fine if you just open the enhancement on your browser.
All right. Feel free to start. Is this where you wanna?
Maybe yeah. So maybe display like the content of the CAP first. So basically, I would like to draw your attention to the CAP that we are working on, and I think will be valuable for the batch working group and the community. The main motivation for now is the multi-cluster queue. So in queue, we want to support running job on multiple clusters. And the architecture to support that is like manager and worker clusters. So the users can interact with the manager cluster and create jobs as if this was like single cluster setup. And then multi-queue will dispatch the jobs to the worker clusters. This is where the jobs will be executed actually. And the status will be mirrored back to the job created by the user onto the management cluster. And here you can, so that the users can get like live updates about the progress the job is making on the worker cluster. And but here you can see already that there is a little bit of a problem, because if we have the job created on the management cluster, then the built-in job controller would start creating pods and basically synchronizing the job. So if we tried to mirror back the status that is on the worker, we would get conflicts and whatnot. So basically what we want to do, it is to disable the synchronization by the built-in job controller on the management cluster, so that all the responsibility of moving forward with the job is to the multi-queue controller. But currently there is no mechanism to disable the job controller on the management cluster, except for using the manifest of kube controller manager and disabling there. But this has also drawbacks. So what we propose is to have the managed by label. And this is conceptually sort of similar to like scheduler name for pods, where we delegate the decisions about scheduling to another third party, potentially third party controller. And here we want to do the same. So we want to delegate the responsibility of synchronizing the job object to the multi-queue that will mirror back from the work. And yeah, that's basically the idea. There were a couple of like other ideas considered. I can go deeper into them if needed. Currently, the two outstanding questions that we got is one from Abdullah about the condition. So the idea is that, for example, to basically give users more information about why a job might be stuck. So the idea is to, so for example, the user created a job, or queue created the job, multi-queue created a job with the managed by label, indicating that it's like done by another controller. But actually, let's say the controller is not even installed. So I don't know, or user created manually, but there is no controller. So then the job is not making any progress. There are no updates on it currently. And one idea to sort of give user the information is to use job condition, because the conditions is probably the place where users would look first in that situation, with the like kubectl describe or get yaml commands. But this has drawbacks. So I listed them, in the discussion. So basically, we want to. So basically, it gives the information that is already there in the managed by label, because we make the label immutable. So it doesn't bring like any other information than just the label presence of the labels itself, but it requires another API call to add it, etc. And also it's another controller that would make this updates. So it has these drawbacks, but it probably gives some information to the user. So I don't know. There is no like decision yet, and so I would like to, if you have some opinions that express. One another argument, I haven't yet posted this, might be that for by analogy to the scheduler name, if the scheduler name for the created pod isn't really indicates some non-existing scheduler profile, then the pod also doesn't get scheduled, and there is also no condition to indicate what's going on. And there are other ideas that could alleviate the problem with debugging. Let's say we could extend the kubectl describe or kubectl get with the extra information. So that's the current status. If you have some ideas, I will welcome yours. And another open question currently we may discuss if you want, or just also feel free in any case, if you don't have currently thoughts, just contribute to the CAP, is about cron job. So currently our use case is mostly around multi-queue, so we don't have that much of a need to support cron job. But it seems we should also support cron job. The concern probably, I'm not sure if we have Philip with us, but as I read it, is that if there is no controller again, then the jobs would accumulate. But this doesn't seem like any different from from even without this mechanism. Like say the jobs may not be making progress for whatever reason, and again the cron job would accumulate them. So it seems like dealing with this situation is still up to the user. Um, but yeah, uh, uh, so it's still in the air. So I would welcome your thoughts on that. Okay, that's from me for the intro. Let me know if you want to discuss today some parts more.
Go ahead, Abhishek.
Yeah, thank you for presenting that, and pardon my ignorance. I've not taken a look at the discussion fully, but I would like to know, like, who adds this managed by label? Is it the multi queue, or is it something that gets discovered on the target cluster and gets added?
No, this will be added by multi-queue in a webhook. So the user will create the job as wouldn't know, but we will add it in a webhook.
So you add that in the webhook, but you essentially don't know if the target cluster has that controller installed or not.
Uh, you mean the target cluster, the worker cluster, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
the user uh, so before sending to the worker, it will be up to the multi-queue controller to remove the managed by label. So for the user comes and creates the job on the management cluster. Then in the webhook we inject uh, the label. But when creating the copy of the job, we keep the essential fields, but we remove the label. Okay, but if there is this controller on the worker cluster, then we assume that it's configured so that it will not reinject. So basically the configuration will be slightly different of the multi-queue.
Okay, and if the controller is not present on the worker cluster, then let's say
The
there is
controller
some.
might be present. The multi-queue will be configured in such a way so that it will not re-add the managed by label. So it will be aware that it's a worker, and
Mhm.
yeah. But
Okay,
multi-queue as such will be installed both of the on the worker and on the management.
okay.
It's the same binary, just
And
configured.
let's say, I mean, we are in this multi queue space, right? So multiple clusters can have different versions of the same controller installed. So in that scenario, do we consider what cluster to target to send the job?
So now you are talking about the situation when we have in multi-queue sort of skewed versions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, No, well, this is yet up in the air. So like multi-queue is very new. So not all of I don't think we specifically discussed this situation so far.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, mm, I guess it's up to the administrator to ensure that the versions are not skewed, or if they are skewed, they are like within acceptable range, so that and the
Okay.
API will be understood.
Okay. One last question. Can you define what does manage by mean in terms of multi-queue and in terms of the cluster, the controller on the worker cluster, in both the sense? What does manage by mean?
So on the worker cluster, we expect that there will be no label like this. So
Yeah,
on the
I
worker
understand
cluster,
that's a label, but does manage by mean that, I mean, for instance, let's consider it's a PyTorch job. Then what does manage by mean? Manage by mean that it will take care of the pod restarts and other things that the controller has. What is the contract here of managed by?
okay, on the management cluster, I guess this is what you.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's running on the worker cluster, right? The job in itself runs on the worker cluster. What is the contract of managed by there? And the job is dispatched from the management cluster to the target. So what is the contract of managed by there in both scenarios?
Okay, so first of all, we have two objects existing, let's say, at the same time. The job created by the user on the management cluster and the mirror copy on the worker cluster. And they are like virtually the same, but the job on the worker will not have the label managed by. So it's just regular job. It makes progress, it creates pods. This is where the pods are created on the worker. And it just runs to completion. Now the multi-queue controller will periodically mirror back, like copy back the job status from the mirror job on the worker onto the management cluster that has the job with the managed by label. What the now on the management cluster, what this managed by means is that this is the controller indicated by the name. So it will be, let's say, managed by multi-queue. So this means that it's the multi-queue controller that is responsible of doing whatever it needs to do within the specification of the job API. So in this particular case, it will not create pods on the management cluster, but it will update the status continuously until the job is done.
I see. So maybe, I mean, to summarize, managed by is a mechanism to sync the status of the job back to the management cluster. Yeah.
Yeah, for multi-queue. But from, let's say, perspective of the built-in job controller in Kubernetes,
Mm-hmm.
its role is just to disable it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you.
It just says that it's disabled, and the responsibility of moving with the status is to another third-party controller. But in the context of multi-queue, yeah, this is what was described.
Let's
Thanks.
move on to Philip.
Okay, so if I can go back to the points we were discussing before. So as I understand it, like the cron job is not like the intended use case here, but we cannot rule out like the possibility that someone else will use the manage by label to create, for example, a fork of the job controller, and we'll have like a special implementation for their use case, and then the user might use it in the cron job as well. So that's like my main issue with this. If we have to make sure that like the cron job controller behaves properly in the future or even other implementations.
Okay, so if I understand properly your question, because I'm not sure if I understand. So let me just clarify. You are talking that someone creates an instance of the cron job API, cron job object, but now the label can be put at two levels. One is that basically on the cron job object. So
No, just on the job itself. I'm not just talking about the cron job, but you have a job with which is controlled by like some third-party controller.
yeah, then the job, if the controller isn't installed, then the job will not make progress, and the cron job will continue creating such jobs, right?
Yeah.
If I may, I think the question is about how do we control, how do we avoid people doing too many forks of the job controller itself?
Is it the question, Philip? Can you maybe?
Yeah. It is also like how we make sure that it like complies with the rest of the system, which is one part which is cron job, but it can affect other parts as well. But the cron job we are maintaining, so we should make sure like what will be the impact in the future.
I can answer to some of it. I
Okay,
think
go on.
some of the discussions were already some of the conclusions about around this topic were already in the cap. Primarily, the idea that, well, this already happens, or this is already possible if you disable the job controller from the KCM manifest. But furthermore, the whatever controller is running, whatever third-party job controller is running, still needs to comply with the API validation. And the API validation for the job controller, it might not be perfect, but it's quite restrictive, even in the status. So some fields cannot be removed once added. Um, um, I'm not I'm not sure, like things like, for example, if you declare the job as finished, can you undeclare, can you undo it? I'm not sure about that. Maybe it is worth doing a pass on the validation of the job controller, the job API, and see where we can tighten it to provide extra guarantees. This might need to go through, well, it will need to go through API reviews, but maybe it's justifiable to tighten the validation harder, so that things make sense, such as, yeah, not flapping back from finished to unfinished job, things like that. I guess that's something we can consider.
Yeah, for me, it would be at least worth it to have the discussion in the cap, like what's the impact or on the job, on the current job, or like we could be also lazy and disable the support entirely for other controls in current job, and that would be the easy way.
What do you mean? If a job created by a cron job has the managed by, then it would basically be ignored?
Yeah, we could fail it on admission that it has an unsupported controller, and we do not accept the cron job.
I see.
Yeah, so we could have a validation of the cron job object that the user wants to create.
But I think, I mean,
But
in the case of multi-queue, cron job would work with the mirroring jobs. So it is a use case to be able to use cron job in multi-queue. I think the path of tightening validation in job status might be more appropriate.
But still, even if the cron job object was validated against the managed by, it could work with multi-queue in the way that the cron job doesn't have the managed by label. But then at the moment of creation, the multi-queue webhook would add it to the job object created from. So still would work.
Correct.
But I'm not sure. It feels a little bit, let's say, suspicious to me at the first look at this for the validation of the cron job, because sure, things can go wrong. Let's say the job may have I don't know, misspelled the controller name, and then that's why it gets stuck. It never gets, because there is a typo in the value of the managed by labels. One example. Of course, things can go wrong, but things can go wrong even currently. The jobs, let's say, maybe have faulty configuration that it doesn't make any progress. And still, let's say you may say that the impact of cron job is that, let's say, cron job creates the faulty jobs in a loop. But I don't see this very different from what currently is the contract between the cron job and job. I'm not sure. Philip, does it make sense to you? Or? you feel that it's different than just a faulty job.
Yeah, I guess it's another mode of failure. Yeah.
So, is there any other questions? Otherwise, I have one.
I think Martin also raised a hand, but now put back down. I'm not sure.
I wanted to say what Aldro have already said, like the use case with cron is quite a valid. User may configure cron job on the management cluster and want to have a particular job executed, and that's an entirely valid use case. And as you already said, there are 100 other ways for the users to shoot themselves in the foot, other than specifying managed by, and we don't prevent them from doing it, from providing wrong image or wrong command line and stuff like that.
Yeah, I like one point was also that it's probably not this case, but if you have a controller which has not the same behavior in the status, then there might be it's understood in the wrong way by the cron job controller.
Yes, some things may go wrong there. However, it's not that this extra additional controller arrives at the user cluster by accident. Someone made a hopefully informed action to put it there, and they are taking the responsibility for it being compatible with the rest of Kubernetes. We are just opening the possibility. We cannot take the responsibility for every possible thing that can go wrong if the user misses configuration options or the custom implementation doesn't work as we hoped it would.
So I think it's still worth putting in the, or discussing what we can tighten in the API validation, especially around updates, or only, rather only about updates. What transitions make sense to limit. With regards to the question from Abdullah about conditions, I agree that in the case of multi-queue, it would be valuable if the mirroring, if the job that is stuck has a condition about why it's stuck, but I don't think we should make it a responsibility of the native job controller. It could be rather the responsibility of the of the mirroring controller to set up the how is it called, the started condition to false as necessary. Because from Kubernetes perspective, the whole point, the only point of the managed by label is to ignore. So similarly to the scheduler name, so we can ignore completely the job from the Kubernetes perspective, but in the case of multi-queue, the mirroring controller can take the responsibility of setting the started condition to false, even if the remote cluster is unavailable or something like that. I would see that way, the responsibility.
So thanks, Aldo. I think this makes sense. Although, and I was, I responded along the line, I think, in the last comment. But this would only work if if there is, let's say, no typo in the managed by label, and it points to valid controller that is there, that can take the responsibility of adding the condition. Because if someone set the value wrong, then the user.
Correct. But again, we have the same problem with the scheduler.
Correct.
Scheduler. That is a misconfiguration from the user in my perspective.
Yeah, it's just that maybe there is no like obvious feedback to the user, but maybe idea I thrown is to extend the kubectl get command to just have another column. That's a cheap way of saying that it's managed by a different controller. Something to consider at least. Philippe?
Yeah, I have mentioned in the PR that like an events could be a possibility. So the job controller would fire an event on first seeing a different controller name. It would say this is managed by someone else in the event, and then it could be a feedback to the user.
And this would be visible with kubectl describe.
I think we have events there as well, right? So
yeah, we do.
I
But
guess
then you need to refresh the event, right? Because it expires after some time.
yes, but as also there is no way for the reconciler to know that he hasn't sent an event before. So every reconcile will have the event, which might be too expensive.
Yeah. Or we just send the event once on creation, and then we don't refresh it. But I'm not sure.
At least there will be some feedback to the user, and then you have also the label. So that's like a fallback.
Yeah, sort of. But yeah, because it expires, it may not be that helpful in the situations where you really want to debug the job that is stuck. And then it's signal that you don't really can trust that reliably just because it expires. Then you write some, I don't know, so some playbooks for debugging and they don't always work, or there are some like weird things to consider, like when events expire, which may be cloud provider dependent, and I don't know.
Yeah,
It adds a layer of complexity, I think, also. I would like something more reliable. I mean, I'm not saying that it's very bad, but it's tricky as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like the condition is much better, but it has higher maintenance cost, especially when you want to reconcile it across multiple controllers, and each has to have the same behavior. So it depends on the trade-offs you want to make.
Yeah, and it also, let's say, it makes that we no longer can mirror blindly, because if we mirrored blindly from the worker cluster, we would remove what the built-in controller put. So you start to need to be very careful about the implementation of the third-party controller. And yeah, this may run into problems as well.
Right, the two controllers racing to update this status. Okay. Any other questions?
But I want to ask a question. What do you guys think, folks, in general, about the idea of extending kubectl describe and get? Because we can let's say in the kubectl describe just add a dedicated line that would essentially play the same role as for the event, and it will be reliable, pool because this will be just based on the label. Of course, the kubectl described contains the label already, you may say, but let's say at the very bottom, because if the job object is very large, you need to scroll up to see the label, and you don't get sort of human readable message. And I was thinking that we could just modify the kubectl describe to say, I don't know, the job synchronization is skipped. Then this could give, let's say, reliable feedback to the user. Any ideas on that?
I am happy with that. Yes, it's not something that you can automate. Like if you have I don't know, alerting system, it might not be visible, but it will definitely be visible during debugging, manual debugging, which is better than nothing.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, I will outline this idea in the cap as well, and summarize the various ideas floating with pros and cons. So thank you for your input.
Okay. Any last minute questions? If not, I want to clarify. I made a mistake earlier. So next week, or in 2 weeks, we're meeting 3 p.m. Pacific time, and in 4 weeks, we're meeting 1 hour earlier than today, 3 p.m. Central European. I got them flipped. But that's it. And you should, if you get lost, you can always go to the working group badge README page. And if you click in calendar, you should have the up-to-date information as well. And you can add it to your own calendar so that you don't miss the events. Okay. With that, let's finish the meeting here. See you all in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.